Der AM-Cast. Gespräche über Gottes Wirken heute und Mission weltweit. Herzlich willkommen, liebe Missionsbegeisterten da draußen. Ich begrüße euch zu einer neuen Sonderfolge unseres Podcasts der Allianz-Mission. Und zwar geht es in diesen Sonderfolgen um den Krieg in der Ukraine, die Auswirkungen des Krieges auf Menschen in der Ukraine, in den benachbarten Ländern und für all jene, die helfen in Deutschland und anderswo. Und heute haben wir einen Gesprächspartner aus einem der Nachbarländer, nämlich aus der Slowakei, und zwar ist das Ján Henžel. Mit ihm steigen wir ein ins Gespräch. Ján Henžel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to continue our relations.
The privilege is ours, I'd like to say. Ján Henžel, you are General Secretary of the Rady Církví Bratskej, our partner church covenant in Slovakia. Tell us a little bit about your church covenant, and if I pronounced it right.
Almost. It's Rada Církví Bratskej. And Rada Církví Bratskej is something like Bund der Freien Evangelischen Gemeinden in Deutschland. Církev Bratská means Brüdergemeinde.
Mhm.
Wir sind aber in der Familie der Freien Evangelischen Gemeinden.
Mhm. So we are internationally connected in the Federation of the Free Evangelical Churches, the IFEC.
Yeah.
And later on this day, you will have another online meeting of the IFEC, also together with Thomas Schech from the Allianz-Mission. How big is the covenant of your churches in Slovakia?
We have 21 local churches in Slovakia. Some of them are relatively big. The largest one having 320 full members, and the smallest only, under 20 full members. We are spread across Slovakia. So there are 3 local churches, independent churches in Bratislava, which is, as you know, the southwest of the country, and in the far east of Slovakia, in Michalovce, is another local church about which we will probably speak a little bit more, because that is only 30 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. And the denomination or the fellowship of the Slovak churches is one denomination with the Czech Brüdergemeinde. We are administratively and legally separate entities, but we operate under one constitution and having one statement of faith. And so in many ways we are still connected.
Okay. Thank you for the insights so far. Slovakia is one of the neighboring countries to the Ukraine. So how is the war in the Ukraine affecting your country and church life, especially in the border regions you mentioned?
Yeah, I would have to say that everything after 24th of February is different. Everything is different in the whole country in general, among the population, in the atmosphere, and also it is quite different in the life of the church fellowship as well. For example, I have 2 friends and colleagues, pastors in our local churches who have married Ukrainian girls. So obviously they are personally very, very closely linked. Then we used to have quite intensive relationships with the Ukrainian churches in the western part of Ukraine in the last 25 years or so. And because we know these churches, many of those pastors, that has affected us very, very much. And of course, the flood of the refugees coming from the border had another very strong impact. But I have to say that, and that is both for the Slovak population in general, and also for the Christians who have responded quickly and very, very positively. So I'm very pleased about that.
So going a little in detail, how are you and the churches of your church covenant able to help people in and refugees from the Ukraine?
Yeah. Very soon, within days after the war broke out, the church council, the Bund, have created a committee, a board of the people who are responsible to coordinate everything related to this humanitarian need in Slovakia and in our denomination. That is not to say that we are doing all the things. We are here to help and coordinate the things, because even within a small country and small denominations like we are in Slovakia, there is a different emphasis in the local churches. As I have mentioned already, in many ways, Slovakia as a whole is becoming like a corridor for the Ukrainian refugees. Most of them are traveling further west, and that goes not only traveling from Slovakia to some of them to Poland, still to Czech Republic, to Austria, to Germany. Even we have coordinated some families or family units going to Spain, to the United Kingdom, to Switzerland and Italy, for example. But it has from the beginning been our intention to help those pastors and their churches in Ukraine who have decided to stay there and to work there. So that is our intention, and we have taken active measures to help them to do that. For those who have decided to leave Ukraine and come here, our Eastern churches, I have mentioned Michalovce. Then there are other churches, Košice, which is the second largest city in Slovakia, Prešov, Bardejov. Those churches, those local churches, are mainly functioning as places where these predominantly women and their children come. They are refreshed there. They may stay for a couple of days, and they move to the west. I mean, to the Western churches in Slovakia. where those who do not want to travel further into the European Union, I mean to Germany or France or Switzerland and so on, those are welcome to stay. And there are these central and western churches of Církev Bratská who have hired flats or apartments or even houses in some cases where these people are accommodated. We try to help them to get into the Slovak social system, to put the children into Slovak schools and kindergartens, and especially because we as Christian churches want to integrate them into the fellowship of our churches. Since most of those things I have already mentioned is being done by the other non-government organizations and by the government institutions as well. But we still remember that we are a Christian church and we want to give bread and butter and shelter with one hand, and to give the gospel with the other hand as well at the same time.
Thank you. So you mentioned that for all the people, the Christians and the non-Christian Slovakia, everything changed since the war started in the Ukraine. What were encounters in the last time regarding the war in Ukraine that you remember strongly, that touched you the most?
If I should be personal myself, I live in the western part of Slovakia, but maybe a week or 10 days after the war broke out, I went to Košice, which is the second largest city, and that is in the eastern Slovakia, because at those early days, very many international students and workers who were in Ukraine and had to leave. So I volunteered to go, and I was helping as a volunteer at the Košice railway station because I can speak Hungarian and a little Russian and a bit English and German. So that was important at that time there. So I spent about 5 days there. And that was a very busy time because hundreds of people were coming there because that's the first transportation hub in Slovakia. From there, the trains are going to Budapest, to Vienna, to Prague, even further west to Germany, and so on. And these people had to go to the airports because there were a lot of Africans there. But then, of course, many Ukrainian mothers and their children. So we were very busy finding the right connection for them and so on to give them some refreshments. And so, but that's where I saw a number of children, their need, and I remember that, and it impressed me very strongly because those are I have grandchildren like that, 13, 12, 10 years, 7 years old. And I have seen, yes, my own Oliver or Ruben could be one of those.
Oh, thank you. What would you say? What are the biggest fears among the people in Slovakia, and what are the hopes of those of the Christians in your country this time?
Unfortunately, I have to say that the Slovak people, Slovak citizens, are very much divided. I mean, divided politically, socially, and unfortunately, especially the opposition parties are abusing the situation, and they are trying to show and persuade the Slovak people that all this help of the government and NGOs towards the Ukrainians is going at the cost of Slovak citizens, that our government is not really taking care of the inflation and the problems of Slovaks, but rather they are helping the refugees. And that is sad.
Definitely.
Because they abuse this situation now. As to the Christian churches, and that goes not only for our own fellowship of churches, but all the churches I know in Slovakia, they all try to do the best they can to be helpful, to send humanitarian needs, and if you're interested, we may talk a little bit specifically of what we are trying to do, and trying to help those refugees who are already here to be integrated as much as possible, which should not be very difficult. It's never easy, but not very difficult, because the Ukrainian and Slovak language are both Slavic languages. So we do not speak the same. Those languages are not the same, but it is not that difficult for the Ukrainians to learn at least some basic skills in Slovak. Then there have been a number of Ukrainian students studying at Slovak universities, and they are now a great use because they can work as translators. That's what we use in our Bund and those local churches, and in some of the those host churches. Who are translating for them. We have already printed some Christian books and tracts in either in Russian or in Ukrainian, and make them available. And they are translating the church services for them, and so on.
Thank you. So we already mentioned that in the IFEC we are closely connected, and the Allianz-Mission already provided financial support for the efforts of the churches, especially in the border regions. We also are working on mission trips with volunteers from Germany, helping Ukrainian refugees together with the churches in Slovakia. What would you say? What help is most needed at the moment in Slovakia?
First, I have to say that we are profoundly, not extremely, profoundly grateful for the Allianz-Mission, because you were the first international agency helping financially, and your financial contribution is the largest we have received so far. So we are very, very grateful for that. And that is not only direct financial transfer, but one of our Eastern churches have received a Ford Transit car that was donated by the Allianz-Mission, and that is being used in transferring people from Ukraine to the Eastern Slovakia, as well as bringing the material help to those pastors and churches within Ukraine, as I mentioned. So that's a great, great help. Yes, and with that came a few brothers or sisters, I don't know, because I'm in the West. I didn't meet them personally, who have seen firsthand what's going on in Michalovce and Košice and these places. And I hope they are bringing the message home, because we are going to be in this probably for a long time. Even though we pray that the Lord will bring the end of the war as soon as possible, but even should that happen today, it will last for months and years until things will really much improve in Ukraine, especially in the east. So, and the long-term help will be needed. So, we are now, as we have opened an initiative within Církev Bratská called Pastors for Pastors. Because most of our Ukrainian colleagues, pastors, were by that vocational. That means they were pastoring their churches, but they had to earn their living by having a secular job or profession. But now they cannot do that. Because they are so busy in this helping the refugees and helping their own people. So the Czech and Slovak pastors have opened this initiative that we want to contribute at least a little, and will then transfer that donation to the pastors in Ukraine. Which probably is not going to be a lot because we are not many, but we want to show our appreciation and love for what they are doing there. And also many or a number of the Ukrainian local churches had to adjust their buildings. Because now having so many refugees, they had to build showers, toilets, places to accommodate for sleeping and so on. So we are trying to help them to do that as well.
Thank you. It's very encouraging to hear how the grown relationship to pastors in the Ukraine and to church in the Ukraine now really builds up to strong help. Thank you very much for giving this insight. So for finishing the question, how can our listeners pray for you, for the churches of the Rada Cirkvi Bratske, and for the situation you're experiencing?
Thank you. You probably need to appreciate, and you are free to cut as much off from this as you like, but we are a post-communist country, and for many decades, we as Christians were on the receiving end of the international Christian community in general, and Freie Evangelische Gemeinde in particular. And now this is, we would certainly not have wished this happening, but now even we in the post-communist countries like Slovakia are no longer only on the receiving end, but have the privilege to being on the giving side as well, and moving and stretching our hands out further east, where the need is so much worse than we have. So this is at the same time a privilege as well. Now we pray that the Lord will provide and end this bloodshed and this terrible suffering as soon as possible, because that is our most important means. It is more than our bank account, more than our cars, more than our families and houses that we have and want to have open for our friends from the East. So we do need to pray for the end of this conflict.
Yes.
Then we would appreciate to pray for wisdom as to what the specific role of the Christian church in this situation is. Certainly, we are here to help and meet the need as much as possible. But there are needs that the government institutions and non-government organizations cannot meet. And how to do that effectively and how to do that sensitively, we are learning. So, but we want to be faithful in that.
Danke für Ihr Interesse und dass Sie so Teil von Gottes weltweiter Mission sind.